Welcome to the next chapter of my book, which I am serializing on Substack and YouTube. And you can read, listen to, or watch for free by going to my YouTube channel and clicking on the podcast tab or going to corykerr.com/book and listen to him there on Substack. This one is an interesting one because it is very much not a self-insert, even though I am an artist and I work on things like that. My wife is very supportive, and I think this one kind of came from the question of like, what would happen if an artist didn't have hope? I think you need hope to be able to like do stuff. And so this one was kind of based on what would happen if you didn't have hope. Like if you knew that the stuff you're working on wasn't going to work out, would that change things? So the artist. The knot in Jansen's back shot a sharp pain up his neck as he realized that he'd been leaning on his entire weight on his left arm again. He capped his brush pen and slowly stood up, loosening his stiff joints as he left his studio, looking for his foam roller. He cursed himself for his bad habit of leaning on his arm at the drawing table. How long had he been sitting hunched over that page of this comic this time? He positioned the foam roller on the floor and laid down on it. He decided to set a timer when he got back to his drawing table so that he wouldn't lose track of time again and sit so long. He lifted his hips and started rolling his neck and back over the foam roller, the weight of his body pushing down on his spine. The cracks and pops of his back and ribs sounded like a small tree branch breaking. Even with all the time and physical toll this comic was taking, he knew it was important. He felt empty when he wasn't working on it. No amount of TV, music, video games, parties, or books helped drown out the feeling that he just wasn't quite himself if he wasn't working on his comic. He had finished several comics in the past. They didn't go anywhere, and very few people bought a copy. He suspected that even fewer people read their copy. This comic was different, though. He knew it would be successful. He knew it. He also knew that if he didn't change something, it would be a total unmitigated disaster of a book that ruined his marriage and left him destitute and obsessed. His knowledge of the future success was more of a feeling, while his knowledge of his complete failure was a documented fact. It was documented by a future version of himself in a notebook that he kept in a concrete box. Most things used to record knowledge of the future tended to unwrite themselves, slip backwards in time before they were used to record anything, or, on a couple of occasions, spontaneously combust. The future hated to be known in the same way that gravity hates objects moving upward. Of course, hate is a completely inaccurate description, as gravity and time are forces and do not think or feel anything. For some reason, we love personification. So we'll say that the future hated to be revealed in the present, because saying that time is an implacable ordering force that actively seeks out and destroys records of the future because knowledge of the future changes the future just takes too long to say and isn't any more clear. Of course, attributing an emotional motive to time is like saying entropy hates boiling liquids on cold days, when in fact entropy merely feels boiling liquids are a little uppity, but it doesn't hate them. The point is that Jansen's had stumbled upon the fact that concrete prevented notebooks and tape recorders from slipping back in time or catching on fire. He had no idea that this was because dark matter was in short supply lately and it didn't permeate concrete very well. And why would he? None of this had anything to do with his comic, and that's all he really thought about. So, when he slipped forward in time, he retained all of the memories that his future self experienced. But when he slipped backwards in time, he lost all memory after his current age. This is why the notebook and concrete box was important. As soon as he realized that he had slipped forward, he would begin writing down anything of note in the future. He paid particular attention to the success of his comic. So far, the notebook was filled with stories of different ways the book completely failed. Many of these futures involved Jansen's many failures, and some of these futures contained Jansen's life having completely fallen apart. Quite a few of these futures told the outcome of the bioprocessor wars, and whether everything was run on fungal networked mushroom computers or vats of nutrient-rich saline solution with lab-grown clumps of human brain cells called organoids. Of course, to a traditional artist like Jansen's, who inked his comic pages with a brush on paper, the outcome of the future format of hardware, software, and wetware was about as relevant as whether or not Betamax truly was a better format than VHS. But here's the key. They were different futures. His slips into the future showed him that the current version of his comic book didn't work. So each time he would make changes to his book or his process, and the future would change. And the reason for his failures would change. There were futures where he never finished his book because he spent too much time world building or became an alcoholic or fell asleep at the wheel and became a paraplegic. So now he was a sober artist with a loose idea of the world he was creating that got a solid 8 hours of sleep every night. Those futures had been eliminated. There were also futures where publishers rejected his book because they didn't like certain characters or the story or the ending or the pacing and each time he slipped forward, he'd write down as much as he could and then slap himself back into his present age. In his present age, he'd read his notebook, experiencing for the first time the information he had written down a few minutes ago. Armed with new reasons his book failed, he'd make changes and redouble his efforts. In this way, he spent years of his life going to specific conventions, meeting specific people, eliminating specific plot points, changing specific scenes, and continuing to obsessively work and all of his free time on his book, while continuing to avoid alcohol and sleep deprivation. Currently, Jansen's was rolling his back out on a foam roller in the kitchen while trying to work out why his protagonist shouldn't be Catholic. The most recent entry in his notebook specifically said, "Luke can't be Catholic. It doesn't work." And then there was a shaky, scribbly line that was likely the result of slipping in time, and then the words, "Not Catholic." He presumed that he had slipped forward a second time while writing and slapped himself trying to avoid a deadly slip chain past his death. His wife walked in, opened the refrigerator door, paused, shut it hard, and he told her, "He can't be Catholic." "Who can't?" "Luke. Luke can't be Catholic." "What do you want about? Is this your stupid kid's book again?" "It's a comic book, and it's not stupid." She took a breath and spat out. "It's not stupid. It's a waste of time and money. You think that you're going to crack the code or whatever, like everyone is going to love this book if you can just loop hack all of the garbage out of it. Better artists and writers than you have access to loop hacking too. What makes you think that you're going to be able to come up with something better than them?" Jansen's paused, waiting to see if she would run out of steam. Sometimes he could just wait her out. She'd storm out of the room and he'd get back to the drawing board. She stared at him, frustrated that he wasn't fighting back, and pushed harder. "You've been working on this book for who knows how long, and no one." "What?" "No one knows how long." "What?" "No one can really keep track of how long anything takes anymore." "What? My point is, you've been at this for a while and you only have 23 pages done, and you've gone back and redone most of them countless times. There's no book. You'll never finish. I thought I was marrying some romantic artist, and here I am, a secretary in a dental office, married to a weirdo garbage man with a studio in our spare bedroom, and we're out of milk. I'm going to finish the book. It's going to be great. Why don't you just buy more milk? We don't have any money. It's the end of the pay period, and it's 4 days until either of us gets paid again. Why do you care whether I finish this book or not?" He was starting to get heated. "You used to take on freelance work. You used to do logos and websites for people. You haven't taken on a freelance client in who knows how long." "No one knows," he said before he could stop the words from falling out of his lips. The sound she made was not worth trying to spell. Many a comic creator would really enjoy trying to come up with a spelling for it, and then they'd put those letters in a cartoony, all caps, thick sans serif font with red letters. Just imagine a large nonsense word floating above her head that sounded like the cross between a stifled growl and someone trying not to clear their throat. It was the sound she made when she thought her husband was teasing her instead of taking her seriously. Jansen's never teased her anymore. It was too dangerous. Besides, they really couldn't afford to replace the dishes she tended to throw at him. He wasn't really in a position to defend himself now. Literally, the physical position he was in was the worst position for dodging thrown objects. He had been rolling his back out on a foam roller when she walked in, and he was still laying on his back playing the conversational possum while he hoped she'd get tired or frustrated or whatever and leave. So, there they were, penniless, milkless, and fighting in the kitchen while she began to violently shake as she was fast-forwarded several years in the slip. No matter how many times you see someone slip in time, it is jarring every time. Jansen sort of cringed a bit as he watched his rapidly aging wife change like a bad claymation effect in an old movie when he noticed a significant change. She had aged, but it was more than that. She looked happy? No, not happy, but peaceful and more expensive somehow. She looked peaceful for the first time in a long time, and she was glowing with a celebrity's hair and makeup job. It was her, and she was about 10 years older, but she was dressed nicer than he'd ever seen her, and her hair wasn't pulled back into a tight ponytail, but looked as though it had been styled in preparation for a slow-mo windblown moment in a romantic comedy. "Janice," he said cautiously, "are you okay?" "I'm more than okay. We're rich. Your books are everywhere. They've made movies and backpacks." He stood up. "Really? What changed?" "This fight. I've heard you say it in interviews. Let's see. You said that we were arguing and you realized that your protagonist needed to be," what phrase did you use? "Needed to be a morally ambiguous hothead." "I wonder what gave me that idea," he said teasingly. His future wife smiled a knowing smile. "Wait, I need to slip back and I'm probably too pissed to listen to you when I do. Record me real quick. I'll believe me." He got out his phone and started videoing. Janice said, "It's me. I'm you. We're us. Listen, it all works out. The books are great. You've got nothing but money. He does it. You guys should celebrate. Okay, punch me before I slip too far." Jansen's broke a plate over her head and probably enjoyed it a little too much. Janice rewound in place and snacked back to her present age. Slightly confused and fuming, she started to talk, and Jansen's put one finger up as he pulled out his phone and played her message. "It's me. I'm you. We're us. Listen, it all works out. The books are great. You've got nothing but money. He does it. You guys should celebrate. Okay." The battery in his phone exploded. He tossed the hot phone into the sink and she rushed him. They made out, rolling around on the floor of the kitchen. One thing led to another, and Jansen's was reminded why being married to a hothead wasn't all bad. "We should go out. We should celebrate." They went out for the first time in who knows how long. They bar hopped and got sloshy drunk. It was an evening to remember. It had been a long time since he had anything to drink, and on the way home they laughed and staggered. They stayed out very late. He teased her, and she playfully pushed him. He tried to recover and stepped half off the curb, causing him to fall into the street in front of a bus that ran over both of his outstretched arms, narrowly missing his head. His x-rays that night in the ER looked like someone took a picture of a bag of pebbles. Over the course of the next few weeks, Janice was hopeful and met with doctors and specialists. Jansen's didn't have the heart to tell her what he knew. He would never draw again. No amount of surgeries or titanium hardware would ever give him his fine motor skills back. Late one night, unable to sleep, he slipped forward 5 years and remembered that he had gone back to work collecting the trash, but his hand shook when he tried to grip a pencil. He didn't bother pushing the nurse's button, hoping that he would slip again. He waited long enough to slip forward another 8 years. Nothing had changed. He was approaching retirement and had been promoted to driving the truck. He hadn't drawn a single page, and Janice had become addicted to pain meds. He slipped again and again. He was chain slipping now, and if someone didn't snap him back to his present age, he would slip past his death. He didn't care. He slowly grabbed his notebook with old, scarred hands and tried to write. As he gripped his pen, a pain shot up his arm, and he felt the old familiar sensation of the titanium screws holding his forearms together. The pen and notebook hit the floor as he slipped forward 3 more years. Just then, a peppy Janice swung the door open, announcing that she had gotten them smoothies. The room stank of death, and she released a primal scream as she hurled a smoothie at the corpse of her husband. All right, that is the chapter. If you want to follow along, you can go to corykerr.com/book. If you want to support me writing this as you do that, you can subscribe there, but you can also read this stuff for free. And if you want to watch on YouTube, you can check it out on YouTube. As always, sign up for my email newsletter at corykerr.com/email, and we will catch you guys next time. Go make stuff.